Hello everyone, my name is Lind, and odds are you've never heard me talk before, at least not in an usual or speaking voice. So odds are you probably don't know that I like anime. Like, a lot. Like, way too much. It's a problem. Anyway, this brings me to my point, that I've seen enough anime to know when things are going in a certain direction, and this is making me concerned about a certain series which I love, but I'm worried about. And that series is My Hero Academia. I'm going to be talking about the manga here, which at the time of writing is at chapter 260, so if you're only watching the anime and you don't want to get spoiled, maybe wait until the end of season 6, probably, based on the current speed of the adaptation. Now, I'm a really big fan of battle shonen manga, in spite of the average quality of those not being the greatest. They're like junk food to me. So, when one of these comes around that I can say in earnest is really genuinely good, I tend to really sink my fangs into it. Now, back when it was publishing, I read Horikoshi's previous series, Sensei no Bulge? Barage? According to the official Viz translation, it's Barrage. According to all the translations I've seen of that, that's not what that means at all, but whatever. And also his first manga, Omegadoki Zoo. And while I can't really recommend either of these now, due to them being derailed by early cancellations and what seem to be heavy-handed editorial decisions, I did see a lot of promise in these and in Horikoshi as a mangaka, and I didn't think either of these deserved the early end that they got. So then, My Hero Academia rolls in and finally gives Horikoshi a chance to spread his wings. And the immense success of My Hero Academia gives me so much joy. It's not hard to see why it took off the way it did. Right off the bat, it has a great premise, it gives you an immediate emotional hook into the story and a reason to care about the characters, who are all very lovable. Horikoshi has an excellent skill of selling a character very fast without being too on the nose about their character traits, which is a delicate line to tread that many mangaka fall either side of. But My Hero Academia has more characters I love than most series have characters, period. Add to that the excellent character designs and the excellent design of the series in general and the interesting power system. This all forms the basis of why My Hero Academia took off as hard and fast as it did. But I think one of the biggest reasons to why this is the pacing. Throughout the early arcs of My Hero Academia, the pacing is incredibly brisk. It always knew exactly what it wanted to do, and it did it without any fluff or excess. In comparison to the long, endless, tiresome story arcs of many other series in this genre, My Hero Academia has a real sense of getting in, doing its thing, and leaving. Every arc had a clear, immediate purpose, both a sense of direction for itself and also for the series as a whole. It's economic storytelling. It's like cutting any of the key story beats would prevent the rest of the story from unfolding the way it needed to. Almost everything that happens is an immediate service to the progression of the story and the development of its primary characters. At least up to and including the Hideout Raid arc. Because since then, while the pacing has still been a lot faster than its contemporaries, I don't think My Hero Academia has been quite as tight and focused as it was in its early chapters. The longest arc of My Hero Academia to date is the 8 Precepts arc, or the Shie Hasaikai arc, or the Eightfold Cleansers arc, whatever you want to call it. It's untranslatable, whatever you want to call this arc. It sits at 3.5 manga volumes and 16 episodes. That is still quite short compared to, say for example, Bleach's Soul Society arc, which was 42 episodes of the anime and 11 volumes of the manga, but it still feels a lot less focused than the arcs prior. For comparison, let's take a look at the Hero Killer Stain arc, which is the early arc that probably has the most in common with the 8 Precepts arc. Both arcs have the initial premise of the students taking on field work while a dangerous villain is on the loose, and revolve around Deku's relationship with this quirk, albeit in very different ways, and with the secondary character's personal stakes in defeating this villain. And insofar as approaching the second and third points, the 8 Precepts arc excels. Mirio's personal quest to redeem himself after failing to save Eri and doing so at all costs is compelling and character-driven, and it flows logically from what's established about his character early on. And while Mirio isn't directly important to the rest of the plot, this fulfills the main goal of the arc, and also feeds back into Deku's own internal struggle with whether or not he's a worthy successor to All for All. But then, let's look at the other main goal of the arc. As both a character and an immediate antagonistic threat, I would say that Overhaul is probably the best villain in the series to date. However, when compared to Stain, there's one big advantage that Stain has. Stain still matters. even now, 4 years and almost 200 chapters after the last time Stain did anything, his influence is still here in the series. He's the reason that Toga, Darby, twice Mr. Compress and Spinner are even in the League of Villains. He's been the catalyst for the development of multiple major characters, most obviously Ida, but most importantly I think Shigaraki. He established the major theme of heroes' roles in society, or even of hero society at large, of what a hero's role in the world is, as a major recurring theme. That was Stain. Overhaul definitely had an effect on the story, but that's just as a spanner in the works. What Overhaul wanted doesn't matter anymore. His influence is only felt because he was something that other characters had to go through, and purely as an obstacle, not because his thoughts or feelings or motives impacted them. Tamaki Yamajiki likewise had a really fantastic fight dedicated to him that rapidly fleshed him out as an interesting and likeable character, but if you cut that fight out, the rest of the story can still go on exactly the same. You could kind of say the same about Kirishima's battle, but it's pretty heavily implied that Rappa will be coming back, so this whole bit's probably still going somewhere. It's probably still relevant. Now, I love Overhaul and Tamaki. I mean, I really love these two. Yeah. But at the same time, neither of them really matter, which is a real shame. The rest of the 8 Precepts are even worse. Despite mostly being very cool characters, they've amounted to nothing more than cannon fodder in the end. Worst of all, Chronostasis, who, despite having second billing in the 8 Precepts, and having some strongly implied characterization, ultimately did nothing. Like, he sidelines Aizawa for a bit, that's all he does, that's it. That's it. Now, not only does this feel like a lot of fluff that pads out the arc and slows down the pacing, but there's more. While the Deku Mirio stuff is the main theme of the plot, there's a second major plot going on here as well, and that's the conflict between the 8 Precepts and the League of Villains. The basic plotline of it is that another villain organization decided that the League of Villains were shitty villains who were overhyped and wanted to use them to further their own goals, ultimately leading to the League of Villains taking them down and proving themselves worthy of being the primary antagonists of the story, and gaining new advantages off the back of the enemy villain faction that they've taken down. And the problem with that is that this exact plot has now happened twice. The Metal Liberation Army arc follows this exact same blueprint. Now, the specifics are quite different. The heroes have nothing to do with the Metal Liberation Army arc. The MLA arc develops and gives backstories to the League, and most importantly, the Metal Liberation Army ends up joining the League of Villains at the end. But with the rest of these arcs being so similar, I kind of feel like we're going around in circles by doing this again. And more importantly, that by utilizing economic storytelling, there's that phrase again, both of these arcs could instead have been one arc. Certainly a much longer arc, but a more satisfying and focused arc in spite of it. Also, I would really much rather see more of these guys than of these guys. This seems to be a common problem with all the most recent arcs of My Hero Academia, that they don't really seem to be as focused on the point as they used to be. I'm not going to knock the Culture Festival arc though, because that one was clearly intended as a breather arc, and it plays very well to Horikoshi's strengths as a writer, in particular his character work in this arc, and Jiro was my favourite, and you can pry this arc from my cold dead hand. It's just a bunch of nice things happening, and I love it, okay? Fight me! But anyway, every arc up to the Hideout Raid seems to have a clear sense of purpose and an objective in the overall series, but that's just up until Deku stops struggling with his powers. And I think this is probably why Horikoshi introduced a questionable plot development later on, which is Deku having access to 7 quirks. But even then, the rest of the arc where this is introduced, it doesn't feel like it's focused on that point. It seems to come out of nowhere. Instead, the rest of the arc just seems to be a way to characterize Class 1B and focus on the development of Class 1A's secondary characters. Unlike, say, the Sports Festival, which was built on the necessary sequence of events that kept the story tight and focused on the development of its primary characters, and on Todoroki's story arc, the joint training arc just feels like it's character development for its own sake. Like, you could say the same about the Metal Liberation Army arc's development of the League of Villains. It wasn't as organically baked into the story, it just was the story. It was taking a detour from what was actually happening. And this is a trend that's really worried me and made me suspect that My Hero Academia might be on a downward slope, that Horikoshi is just plugging away at the series without a clear sense of direction. However, looking back at the Sports Festival arc, as tight as that arc was, there was always one part that felt a little out of place to me. And that's Deku versus Hitoshi Shinso, whose own story just at the time seemed to be a pointless subplot that, while good, seemed extraneous. There's a trend in shonen manga, a Jump especially, to try and make each individual chapter seem like a major emotional beat, which is good for ratings. I kind of wrote Deku vs Shinso off as this at the time. It always felt a little off. But then in the joint training arc, something happened. Shinso came back. A plot point that I'd long since written off as irrelevant suddenly reared its head back round, and now Shinso is going to be transferring to the hero course in the second year. And this opens up a lot of new opportunities in the story, especially given that it's very unclear right now what kind of series MHA will be once Year 2 rolls around. And rereading through the physical volumes when they come out, after having already read the online releases, it's weird to see how many times the Meta Liberation Army was seeded throughout previous arcs. So with this in mind, it's clear that Horikoshi isn't just writing whatever the hell. There's some clear forward thought being put into place here. What I'm getting at here is, even though My Hero Academia has seemed to have less direction for a while, at least to me, maybe the details that I'd brushed off as insignificant are all building up to something. Maybe they're part of a much larger narrative that we simply can't yet see from where we are. I'd initially dismissed the character focus on Todoroki in the provisional license exam arc as being a bit pointless and redundant, and telling us stuff that we already knew. But at this point, it's clearly an important part of the Todoroki family drama plot thread that's been important throughout the last several arcs. And at this point, it's very obvious where that one's going, what with Dabi clearly being Toyo Todoroki. I mean, yeah, it's not, like, confirmed, but come on, we know. It's obvious. If it turns out it isn't, it's just going to be, like, a plot betrayal for the sake of it, just on the level of, say, you know, anything that happened at the end of Game of Thrones. But maybe he kills Endeavor, maybe he doesn't. It's going somewhere is the point. And bringing back Shinso when they did may well be setting up for us to finally find out who the UA traitor is. I mean, my money's on this little shit. In which case, him being moved into the hero course would be a prime excuse for him to fill the traitor's former class seat. Especially since this plot thread's recently been brought back up. They're definitely going somewhere with that. While it's pretty obvious where the plot is going at the moment, to the destination it's been building up to for a while, the League of Villains raid Tartarus, Shigaraki inherits All for One, and he kills All Might. But otherwise it's quite hard to say where My Hero Academia is headed, especially after that. It's been so clearly indicated for a while that Eri is going to have a significant role in the future of the series, but as for what that is, I haven't the foggiest. And likewise, the quirk-destroying bullets that the League stole from Overhaul are still there. Who knows when, if, and how those will come back up. My point is that, while My Hero Academia may seem like it's going nowhere, there's every indication that it knows more about what it's doing than it lets on. And yes, being that it's Shonen Jump, it is more likely to fuck up in the long run than not, but arbitrary cynicism never got anybody anywhere, and I'd like to have hope for this series. Even if it doesn't, truth be told, I'm sure I'll still enjoy My Hero Academia. Horikoshi knows how to be entertaining even in the shakier parts of his story. And I might be tempting fate here on this video aging poorly, but I'd like to think that 5 or 10 years from now, people will still consider My Hero Academia to be the modern standout of its genre. That we'll be able to look back on everything and see the big picture that Horikoshi was weaving all along. For now, all we can do is keep reading and hope for the best. I've been Lind, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, yeah, me too. Hopefully I can make this a thing, who knows. I look forward to finding out. See you next time, maybe.